Moderator na ovom panelu je gospodin Ricardo Junšaj, Threat Hunter i Penetration Tester u Ministarstvu javne uprave. Ricardo trenutno pohađa magisterij iz oblasti informaciono-komunikacionih tehnologija. Kao bezbjednosni analitičar, incident responder, lovac na prijetnji i zagovornik podizanja svijesti o cyber bezbjednosti, doprinosi svojim vještinama radu vladinog CIRT-a u oblastima obavještajnih podataka o prijetnjama i cyber bezbjednosti, digitalne forenzike i testiranja penetracije. Čast mi je da ugostimo našeg prvog panelistu u okviru ovog panela, gospodina Branka Primetika, generalnog direktora u CEDARS-u. Prije CEDARS-a, gospodin Primetik bio je više od 24 godine u službi kao predsjednik i glavni šef za strategiju kompanije EGT sa sjedištem u Vašingtonu. EGT kompanija u kojoj je on suosnivač bila je nagrađivani pružalac konsultantskih usluga za transformaciju poslovanja, IT i cyber bezbjednost uz saveznu vladu Sjedinjenih država. Svojim preduzetničkim vođstvom Branko je pomogao u izgradnji EGT-a koja sada broji preko 400 zaposlenih, dok je radio direktno na projektima klijenata. Naš drugi panelist u okviru ovog panela je gospođa Magda Janu iz kompanije Palo Alto. Magda ima gotovo 15 godina iskustva u IT poslovnom svijetu, a to iskustvo je stekla radeći za velike IT dobavljače, Hewlett Packard Enterprise, Microsoft i sada Palo Alto Networks. Danas se fokusira na implementaciju strategije kompanije u Rumuniji, Bugarskoj, Češkoj i Slovačkoj. Magda, izvolite. Kao trećeg panelistu najavljam gospodina Krista Middletona, koji nam dolazi iz Quality Business Engineering. Krista Middleton je porijeklom iz Južne Karoline, Sjedinjene Američke Države, sa više od 15 godina iskustva u informacionim tehnologijama, inženjeringu cyber bezbjednosti i upravljanju programima. On je bivši podoficir američke vojske i civil u vladi Sjedinjenih Američkih Država, koji je dizajnirao i implementirao taktičke, operativne i strateške strategije cyber bezbjednosti u Sjedinjenim Američkim Državama preko Ministarstva odbrane i u inostranstvu, Irak, Afganistan i Kuvajt. Kristin je specijalizovan za analizu cyber odbrane, malware, forenzička analiza, odgovor na incidente, razvoj sadržaja, strateško planiranje i organizaciono vođstvo. Trenutno pruža podršku vladi Crne Gore kao savjetnik za cyber bezbjednost, gdje daje preporuke o temama kao što su upravljanje cyber incidentima, planiranje odgovora na incidente i jačanje komunikacionog sistema. Izvolite.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Ivona, for the kind introduction. It is my honor to be a part of this panel on the topic being private sector strategies for improving cyber defense. I will start the panel with the lady we have, Magda, on the question Palo Alto and its main mission, and how does Palo Alto plan to leverage emerging technologies like AI or machine learning on its cyber defense strategies.
Thank you. Good afternoon. It's an honor to be here. Before I speak about Palo Alto Networks, let me speak about Montenegro a little bit. Mr. Dusan Mirkotic was saying earlier, Montenegro has an advantage because it's a small country, everybody knows everybody, so it's easy to communicate. I think Montenegro has, and the countries in the region have another big advantage, and the big advantage is that you are starting from, well, not scratch, but you have this opportunity to make it right from the start. And I commend you for organizing this conference and for onboarding this journey, because I think you have a tremendous opportunity to do it right from the foundation. Palo Alto Networks, I may come across a little bit as a lack of modesty, but trust me, I'm not unmodest. I'm really proud of what my company does. We are the most innovative, we are the largest, but also the most innovative cybersecurity company in the world. We are obsessed about that. Everything we've done was to enter a market and disrupt it, and do everything different, and empower all our existing customers to do things differently. I will give you an example because we have been known for being a firewall company. We are the company that put the NG, like next generation, acronym in the next generation firewall terminology, because when Palo Alto Networks innovated or created the new kind of firewall, Gartner, who was testing it, said this is more than just a firewall, it's a next generation firewall. And this is what we've done with all our portfolio. We went into every vertical that we started to approach, and we disrupted it, we changed it. Why are we so obsessed about innovation? It's because our struggle is not to solve today's problems. Today's problems are solved by any existing cybersecurity company in the world. It's obvious, that's why they exist, to solve today's problems. Our struggle is to solve next or future problems, because as everyone else who was on this stage was saying, this world is morphing and is rapidly morphing. The difference between the good guys and the bad guys is immense in terms of resources, in terms of speed, in terms of sophistication. So we need to be there in advance. We need to innovate. We need to anticipate what's on their mind and what they will do. Our motto is to protect the digital way of life and to make every day safer than the one before. That's us, and the way we do it is by throwing into this battle a quarter of our resources. 25% of our resources are engaged exclusively in R&D. It's their life. That's what they do. They just think ahead and they try to come up with new ways, new techniques, new technology that can be ready for tomorrow's attacks and bad guys. You've asked about AI and machine learning. I think it's all been said with the previous panel. I really enjoyed listening to them. Congratulations. I mean, you've really captured it very well. There's not much else to say, really. We've built our technology using machine learning, and it's not a new thing. It's been here for the past 4 or 5 years in Palo Alto Networks and in the world for probably more than 20 years. I agree, it is not going to replace people, but it will be a retention tool for people, because as a lot of the speakers before said, there is a big scarcity of human resources. We are losing people, or we don't have enough people. So what machine learning will do is to help us keep those good people, to keep them focused on what really matters, on value-added activities, instead of overloading them with repeatable activities that can be done by a machine. So one thing that machine learning does and will continue to do is to help companies and governments retain people and upskill people, because their free time will be used to upskill, to become better at what they do. One way we use machine learning is to automate response, and this again helps us keep people, but this also helps us keep our customers safe, because attackers are using machine learning and attackers are using artificial intelligence. If we don't fight in the same way, if we don't oppose the same sort of response, we're bound to lose. So with machine learning, we've managed to automate response, to make it, to improve our mean time to detect and mean time to respond to hours, sometimes minutes, whereas 1 year ago, 2 years ago, we were talking about weeks, sometimes months. So we are coming to where our attackers already are. Another way we are employing or using machine learning is by assessing behaviors. And I think you've said it very well. Human beings are better at identifying patterns. We believe that machine learning is also good at identifying patterns that are scattered across the organization and across the network, because if something happens in one part of the network on one endpoint and then something else happens with an application and something else happens with a part of the network, it's difficult for a human mind to correlate all these disparate activities, put them together and understand it's actually an attack. So machine learning does exactly this. For us, it creates a map using mathematics, advanced mathematics, of course, a map or a baseline behavior, and everything that is off this behavior is regarded or is flagged as an attack. Why we need this sort of mapping and behavior analytics is because attackers are not necessarily using malware anymore. They're using our own tools. They've weaponized existing software. So with a simple tool that detects malware, we would not be able to understand that there's something happening in our network. It's really our firewall, our CRM, our own tool. And this new technique, we call it leaving of the land. Yep. It's something that can only be detected by something that we call machine learning or artificial intelligence.
Yep, no, I agree. Emerging technologies like AI and machine learning, as we all know, is evolving rapidly, and we all should prepare or should have some kind of plan how to leverage these technologies. But at the same time, we all should be very careful how we put them in use. And next question is for Branko. How does CILRS view the role of private sector on defense strategies in cybersecurity?
Thank you very much for the question, and I'm very happy to be here. I appreciate the invitation very much. I do have some notes because I did write a very lengthy response to this particular question, because there's a lot of ways that the private sector can help with the advancement of cyber defense strategies, creation of innovative techniques, etc. So I think that the fight against cyber attacks is the private sector is pivotal in that. There's two distinct ways that I think they play a role in that field. One is they could be a solution provider, like Palo Alto, for example, who creates innovative technologies that will not only take care of today's problems, but future problems as well. Or they could be a service provider, a direct service provider to clients. In the first role, the private sector does a lot. Research and development is one of those things that the private sector is very good at. They're funded well, but they're trying to come up with the next big thing, which they can sell to clients, and that's really important. Share information on best practices. A lot of private sector companies do technical studies, which are very key, and distribute those, which share a lot of great information. I thoroughly read everything from Palo Alto and for others as well. But then also from other client engagements, because we have other clients who could bring best practices through use cases, saying, you know, we faced this before, this is something that we can face right now. Participating in professional forums to create industry guidance and industry standards, that's very important. There's so many cyber professional forums that are out there where you can participate and actually become involved in the community, right? And implementing, identifying and reporting potential cyber threats internally, but also to the national CERT. I believe that every cyber incident should be reported to the national CERT. I think it's important that the remediation tactic is also reported as well. So you don't want a threat to proliferate across the nation when you already resolved it once. So that's key, and I haven't seen a lot of, at least I've been in this region a year and a half, I don't see a lot of that. I don't see a lot of private companies reporting techniques. Now, for private sector organizations that are also critical infrastructure providers, there's a little bit more in terms of requirements. First of all, they need to comply more heavily, and I think this was mentioned already, with government law standards, technologies. There's different ways to secure remote sensing, remote sensors, for example, smart grid, etc. And I think that those things are important. Plus, I do believe that the government, and this I already heard this before, but I'm repeating it because it's very important, that the government sponsors cyber attack simulations between regional partners, between partners who are in country, so that you're ready. You have an incident response plan and you're ready to execute it and collaborate with the national incident response team, so you have all these resources that know exactly what to do, when to do it, and how to execute a remediation technique, recover your systems as quickly as possible, because time is of the essence there. Now, I still have a little bit. So the other way that we talked about service providers, and the other way that I think that the private sector can get involved is by being engaged by clients, either in two ways. One is as a direct provider of cybersecurity services. This includes things that I've already mentioned before, plus your consultative, your provide advisory services. You're there with the client every day. You know their needs. And you're also responsible for evolving their cybersecurity program. And cybersecurity programs, for example, some of the services that we offer are, if you don't have a cybersecurity program, and you don't, or you have an existing one, but it's fragmented and it's everywhere, not really collaborating, what we do is we use best practices, we use what the client requirements are, where they stand in legislation, to either create a cybersecurity program or launch it, or to refine an existing cybersecurity program, so it meets all those legislative requirements. I think that's very important. That's something that I've been working on in Serbia a little bit. Even writing laws and those functional structures is really key. And I may say that, well, yeah, you're an American, and we use different techniques over there, but really, when you get down to it, it's not that different. And I think that's very important. And the other way that I'm not going to mention everything else, because we recommend things like security by design, which we already covered, zero trust architectures, which are current, and zero trust architectures are, I'm going to explain it very simply. And the simplest way I can explain it is trust nothing, verify everything. It sounds like you're absolutely paranoid about accessing the system. But what it really starts with is limiting user access to data that they need to do their jobs, and only that. Nothing else. There's no lateral movement. You can't access everything that you could before. And then repeated authentication. So you need to provide credentials. You need to provide repeated authentication in various ways to prove your identity. And the other thing that we do is cybersecurity, or the private sector could do, is cybersecurity. I sound like I was talking about my company, but really direct service providers, is provide training. Now, we've all talked about cyber hygiene training, but I'm not sure that we talked about providing it to every single employee of the government. And we focus primarily on the public sector. So I'm talking about providing this training from entry-level secretaries all the way up to senior management. Why? Because each of those people can access your network, then click on a phishing scam and unleash something, a cyber attack or whatever, onto your network. They need to know how to identify a phishing scam so they do take the appropriate action. Also, insider threat it's kind of like a recognition of behavior. So let's say, for example, cyber hygiene to me covers insider threat. identification is when you see a employee printing large amounts of data that they're not supposed to have access to and carrying it out of the office. Or you see an employee who's looking at things that they're not supposed to, or asking questions about something they're not supposed to be asking about. Those things are just two examples, but cyber hygiene goes well past that. And then the other way that the private sector can help is not serve as on-site consultants, but they can serve as MSSPs, which are managed service security providers. That's when a client organization, will take a program and it will outsource the whole program to a third party or parts of it to a third party because they don't have the resources necessary to take care of everything. And the third party is commercial entity, private sector. They have their own SOC. They provide numerous services, including intrusion detection, vulnerability scanning, incident response through the cloud. So that's my answer.
Yes, I totally agree on the relationship between the private sector and the public. It should be unbreakable because it's very important to have a good relationship between the private and public. If the private sector has a cyber attack, it can lead to a country having a cyber attack and sharing. I'm emphasizing on the sharing information where private sector can very much help even the country for sharing information of indicators of compromise or some kind of other information where it would help the country on cyber defense. And we'll move on to Kristen, I'm sorry, which cybersecurity strategy do you believe the private sector should prioritize for advancement on cyber defense?
Wow. So first and foremost, again, thank you for having all of us. It's been an amazing event, right? But see, here's the benefit, but also the risk of going last. All the cool things have been said, right? All of the innovative strategies and technologies you've been briefed on. I mean, I'm going after Palo. Let's be real. Industry leader. Now, I won't bump you up because I'm representing a different company.
We think you know.
All right. So, with that being said, let me think of something on the spot, right in this moment, to share with you all. I'll tell you what. Show of hands. How many people in the audience today are not members of the IT community directly? Anybody? We got one? Oh, that's a W. That's a win. We have two.
You got three.
Even better, we have three. How many people are not members of the cybersecurity community specifically? Anyone? Perfect. I'll go with my first three. So here's the thing. I'm going to show you a correlation between cybersecurity, information technology, and your day-to-day life, day-to-day activities, and I'm going to do that in a way I think Patrick would appreciate, a metaphor, okay? When I arrived to Montenegro, I in fact did not have a map, okay? I drove around for days just looking for a coffee shop, and I found one, Nona, okay? Nona. Love Nona, see? She knows. The croissants are amazing, okay? So I go into Nona, I sit down, I pull up my phone, and I immediately connect to the Wi-Fi. That's unsecured, doesn't require any passwords, any type of permissions. Mind you, at this point, I'm just an average guy, average Joe, in a coffee shop. Now, I have a little bit of charisma, okay? So people came up to me, spoke to me, told me what their jobs were, where their families worked, persons of interest, all these cool pieces of information. And mind you, again, I'm cyber. They don't know that. They don't know what I am, what I do, who I work for. And neither did I know about them. But here's the thing. I sit down and I chat with one of the hostess. And I say, hey, just so you know, your Wi-Fi is unsecured, unencrypted, and I can show you everyone who's currently connected to your devices. And I can do that without any type of brute forcing or any type of active intrusion, right? I can just show you. So I pull out my phone, this fancy app. It's totally free. I show her everyone that's connected. I can see their systems. I see vulnerabilities and weaknesses that their systems currently have advertised to the world, right? And I say, now, while you may not be a member of the cybersecurity field, 1 second, my reminder to pray and to love life. going on with you, so right on time too. So, and I say, hey, you know, while you may not be a conduit to cybersecurity, right? Any of your patrons who come in here and connect to this Wi-Fi, connect to this network, they are now feeding into this wonderful cyberspace, right? This information system, because again, information systems begin with people and the connecting technologies that allow them to communicate, right? So then I show her on my phone that I've changed the name of my hotspot to match the name of known as free Wi-Fi. And now people are trying to connect to me because my signal is strong. What I demonstrated there was a different type of attack that uses rogue devices, rogue access points. Now, again, you're in a coffee shop. It's a Sunday. You're enjoying your day. You're a regular person, not in IT. But guess what? Because of one vulnerability, because of one weakness in a basic configuration that any of us here would put in place, because of that, you are now susceptible to an attack. We're all connected. We're all in this together. So, the innovative strategy that I'm going to say, make it up on the spot, so please bear with me, is this. Private organizations and government organizations should leverage the one technology, the one tool, the one capability that we all share and that we all value. And you've heard it before and you'll hear it again. That's communication. Point forward, simple, succinct, clear, and to the point. Communication, structured communication, intentional communication. Now, if you take that and you package it into cyber, what does that look like, right? Cyber threat intelligence, information sharing. We talk about indicators of compromises, indicators of attack. We talk about the IC failures and the attack for the water sanitation systems. We talk about the pipeline-based attacks. Again, imagine for a moment if any of those industries did not share information with the United States government. If the United States government did not push out information on those attacks to various other members of the industries that could have been impacted. Imagine if that didn't happen. Imagine the mean time to response, the mean time to restoration, the time it would take for organizations to recover from the attack that they never knew happened because they never received the intelligence. Information sharing is in fact innovative because it goes against your innate desire to protect data, your innate desire to protect your proprietary information. But in the space of cyber, that line is very thin because all it takes is a visit to the coffee shop.
Thank you. I'm glad we're on the same page on emphasis. Information sharing and communication is very key. I will continue to Magda. Can you share an example how Palo Alto has innovatively advanced cyber defense coming from the private sector viewpoint?
I think the big difference between private sector and public sector is that private sector lives by a concept we call efficiency. Every single cent that we invest needs to have the highest return on investment. And this is what private companies do in general. So this is one way that the public sector can start learning and investing in their cyber capabilities, cyber defense capabilities. And before answering your question, I would give an advice, if I may, and this is to the public sector of the countries in the region. Invest, don't spend, because spending is just throwing money on some technology that looks flashy or just let's say more affordable today, but we don't know how it will behave in the future. Coming back to your question, I will tell you what our founders say. I will not use his words because he's a founder, so he can be more cheeky. He can use words that I cannot. But he said the cybersecurity industry messed up. It evolved in a very strange way every time, and no other industry did this. Mind you, if you look around, there's no other industry that did this mistake. Every time there was a problem, the cybersecurity industry would create a response, a solution. Yeah? And that's how we ended up having 2,000 solutions and or more. And by the way, I hope I remember the statistics correctly, but every year about 200 more appear, and another 300 die because they cannot survive because it's just too crowded out there. Companies and governments buy these point products, some of these 2,000 solutions, and feel like they're more secure because now we have so many. We have 40, 50, 60, 80. We've found customers and governments that have 80 such point solutions. Then they feel secure, then they do not understand that they've thrown money out of the window instead of investing into something we like to call a platform, which is something more integrated, more robust, and it doesn't leave any holes in it, any vulnerabilities. And this is what my company started to address. And our founder decided to look at things differently. He said, I don't want to create a company because the world needs another cybersecurity company. It has enough. It's because I want to do things right and I want to do things efficient. So this is one of those innovative strategies that you were mentioning. Being efficient, spending time, spending money, not spending money, sorry, investing money, yes, into something that really makes sense and will return in years from now. Not feeling more safe because you bought all these point solutions, because again, they don't work, they don't talk to each other, they leave a lot of vulnerable spaces in the cybersecurity fabric, but looking at an integrated solution that covers more points of the organization. And a lot, you've said it was mentioned, zero trust. I know it's everybody speaks about it. It's been here again for many years. But it's a concept. It's not something that needs money. It's such a simple way to build your strategy with that mindset. Yeah, it's just an architecture. It's nothing else. If a company comes and says, "I will sell you zero trust architecture," throw them out of the door because they're scams. Yeah, it doesn't take anything. But it's another thing that the private sector really did, and this was define what the crown jewels were, and build the strategy top down, not bottom up. I know it sounds even a bit obvious. I know you would say, of course they do that, of course we should do that, but it doesn't always happen. So work with that in mind, work with a strategy, with a top-down strategy in mind, just define what needs to be protected, and for the sake of efficiency, throw your resources at that, protect that, because if, God forbid, something happens with the marginal part of the organization, it's not such a big issue. This way you will invest your money in a smart way.
Can I sprinkle something onto that? So something you spoke of really triggered a memory here. So we're talking about capability building, right? We're not just talking about investing in technologies, but a part of that requires you to use systems and services that your staffing is somewhat familiar with, or give them the appropriate training so that they're capable in facilitating that solution. And one of the things I think I want to lean into here is making sure your organization's established a defense-in-depth strategy that protects your critical systems, or whatever service it is that you're selling or providing to the world, right? If you have a strategy for that, then when it comes time for procurement and you have a few dollars lying around, right, and you want to go buy a new system, whether it be something on the edge or some EDR platform, that's fine. But if you don't tie that into an overarching strategy, you're going to lose sight of all the technologies that you have in your environment that may not be enriched. So you could have taken that same time and put it toward training to get your tooling, integrated appropriately. So again, capability building, strategizing, and that make sure that forms around the things you care about the absolute most. Now, I won't say that in this space I've seen a lot of good appliances lying in closets, collecting dust, okay? I plead the fifth. But what I will say is this. I've seen a lot of opportunities, and how much should I reveal here? I'll tell you what. 2 years ago, okay, I was in a situation where there was an attack, and it was multifaceted, 100% advanced persistent threat. I won't tell you what, but I'll tell you this. The organization that I supported at that time had a whole bunch of technology that they already purchased, and it was in a closet, sitting on a shelf, unused or underutilized, okay? This is one of the rare times where them having those platforms allowed me to take a step back from the incident and say, hey, here's what you have, because they had a decent asset management platform, so they could actually tell me, right? I looked at the capabilities they were already licensed for and already paid for, and I helped them build a D&D strategy to help not only react to the cyber incident that they were facing, but to prevent future accidents from occurring, or incidents, or events. Now, while they were really lucky, twofold. One, they had the technology. Two, they had the people who understood, what it would take to make that success. But most organizations don't have those things simultaneously. So it is best that you begin with your strategy in mind, and you use your tooling to facilitate that capability. Cool.
I don't want to feel left out, so I'll build upon that too. So tooling is very important. You need, in today's world, you need tools to be able to defend yourselves from cyber attack. But you might have met this, but I don't. But maybe I missed it. But you define your strategy, right? You define the enabling law that's there, and then you policies and guidelines. The functional structure that's supposed to be there, and then you define the tool set that you're going to be using. It's supposed so it augments people. So I'm a consultant, and we're technology agnostic. So we'll work with Palo Alto if the government's needs require it, and if it's within budget, right? But I'll also at the same time, if Microsoft has something better to offer at a lower price and meets the needs, then I'll do that as well. So it's very important that I think people processes are put up front, and I think you mentioned that. And then the tooling is just something on the side, because I also had a story about a company, a very large company, when I came to Serbia a year and a half ago, that called you and said they were just attacked and they're losing money. And they said, what is our first move? What do we do? And I'm like, well, you should talk to your incident response team. They should already have identified the vulnerability and they're working on containing it. They're like, well, we don't have an incident response team. We have a bunch of tools. But we have an IT network administrator who serves as our security officer, who doesn't know how to use them. So they had a network administrator as their IT, and this isn't something, as I've mentioned this in the past, the story, because I've spoken in Macedonia, I've spoken in different places. Those are two very different things, right? And so you do need cyber professionals who are accredited and by a certification from CISP or whatever it is. They're qualified to do the work. This region is very interesting when it comes to cybersecurity as well.
Ricardo, we're ruining your flow. I'm sorry. But I want to say something to your point, and this is have a plan. Incident response plan for sure, because it's bound to happen. Sooner or later, it will happen. So you need to know who to call, if it's outside your organization, or if you have the means, if you have the tools, if you have the people, if you have the capacity to do it internally, then that's just dandy. So do it internally, but have a plan for the situation when you may get compromised, because sooner or later it will come.
Have a plan, test your plan regularly. Test it until failure to identify the gaps in your plan, then change the plan. Same thing with your policies.
Yes, I agree. I was about to say it because if you have a plan and you didn't test it, how are you going to know the plan is successful? Well, that's why we come to the question where how does Cedars approach cybersecurity in its operation? Do you have an advice for the public sector or even for the public on cybersecurity and building a cybersecurity ecosystem?
Yeah, well, first I'll start off with a little bit of history. So when I was in Washington, D.C., I spent about 25 years working on developing cybersecurity programs and working at the White House on developing FedRAMP, which is a centralized process for accredited cloud services to be deployed onto a government environment, which was innovative in a certain way because it was something new to the federal government. They didn't know. They were all disparate, and everybody used to do their own accreditation process, slowing down the adoption of cloud computing and not saving money. So instead of spending money in the United States, we're measured by the cost savings.
Even worse.
Because we need to then, because a lot of departments can then reinvest in something that they need to have done. So that's innovative. When I talk to governments around here, we talk about first have a proactive cybersecurity program, not a reactive cybersecurity program. And you can't always be running around taking care of cyber incidents and with your head cut off, right? So you need to have you have an organized structure, be staffed properly, have the right tools, be able to monitor threats as they're up and coming, be able to take preventive action before the threat reaches your network, and always stay current on what's out there, right? That's very important. And I also think that in terms of cybersecurity, and something that I've talked to governments around here is don't buy solutions for the solution's sake. Not I would buy a Palo Alto because I like you see very great. But then I don't know about, I've seen governments here with 14 different health management systems, or I've seen, with like cyber, because they have funds and they're willing to spend, and that's not the best way to do it. So you need to go through the market research exercise. You need to be able, there needs to be governance, and you need to be able to prove and build a business case for purchasing an IT system. I know that sounds logical to many of you. You kind of like, yeah, absolutely. But you'd be surprised at how many people just kind of ignore that fact and or deploy systems without being tested. So when I came over to Belgrade, that's where I live right now. My parents are from the region, so I said to live in Europe, I may as well live somewhere in the Balkans. Cedars focuses on the public sector in the Western Balkans. So that's what we do. I've been working on developing cyber laws and providing advice on building cyber programs. Cyber laws of course, have to comply with EU standards and requirements, but they also need to provide meaningful information on what the expectation is, right? The laws will say, for example, that you must test your systems prior to deployment, blah, blah, blah. This means that this is what it is. What if you don't do that? And you need to identify let's say, a kind of it's not like slapping in the hand. It's sort of like a punishment. It's not a punishment. It's like you can't deploy your solution on time. I think that's really important. I think it's very important that cyber teams are happening, and it's really great because in Serbia I was able to work on recommending structuring a national cybersecurity agency in Montenegro. They're already doing that. So I think that's really important because otherwise we have fragmented programs everywhere and nobody was working with anybody else or sharing information with anybody else. So I think it's great. Cedars in Belgrade, and we have offices in Ljubljana, Zagreb, and maybe one here in Podgorica, is that we are a small business. right? And we have different needs than, let's say, a very large business. So we do the basics, which is that we have our employees sign non-disclosure agreements, which is kind of, and that protects government data and corporate data. We do training once a year, and then we have each employee sign a piece of paper legally binding saying that they will adhere to the policies and practices that have been covered. We provide them with opportunities to go to conferences and trainings. They're accredited and certified, so I think that's important. As far as threat intelligence and monitoring, we do outsource that to a MSSP. So because of resources, so that's how we approach cybersecurity within CEDARS.
That's a really good approach. Would like to end this panel with a question to Kristen, and how would you advise your private sector customers on the implementation of the suggested innovation?
That's a great question. Let me think about that for a second, since I made up my innovative strategy. Okay. Based on what I've observed in the region, okay, and my limited exposure, I've only been here 8 months. Organizations would benefit the most from implementing service level agreements with any service provider that they interface with, especially if that service provider is on the hook for providing a cybersecurity incident response, a countermeasure, some type of logging or detection, anything cyber related, or anything that ties into their core business or mission requirement. There needs to be a service level agreement that dictates, if X happens, I need you to come do Y and Z, okay? Get that in writing. Now I can be more specific, but I'm not sure who our audience is at this moment. Actually, I will be more specific. We're at the end, I'm last, it's been a great conference, here we go. If you're an organization, okay, government, public, private, if you start a Facebook group, if you're an organization and you use an internet service provider, okay, they are your initial point of any type of network or cybersecurity, because they are the point at which information originally flows into your network more often than not. It is imperative that if you do not have protections written into your contracts with your ISPs, that you do so. There are basic controls that they can implement, sometimes for additional cost, and sometimes not. It's just simply you asking, such as providing volumetric or session-based DDoS protection. That is basic, but if you do not ask, you shall not receive thy service. And that's something that's very simple that can protect your web server. That's something that can protect a core function that your business provides, and it's a simple ask. Basic. Protect me where you can, charge me where you can't. You either find the additional funding or you find a mitigating action. But at a minimum, you know, or you tune your edge firewalls, okay? Other than that, honestly, I'm keeping it light because cyber is fun, okay? I see a lot of long faces. Cyber is fun. It hurts when you're reacting, I get it, okay? But when you're in the weeds, oh, it's nothing like combing through some logs and actually finding something, contacting your team, you performing your activity, you do it right, you document it, you communicate your success, and then the next time something happens, it just hits your logs, it hits your SIM, and you say, hey guys, hey team, remember when this happened last year and we got smacked around? Not today, baby. Let's have pizza, let's have coffee at Nona. I swear this is not a Nona advertisement.
I just wanted to reiterate one thing that you said, which I think is very important, and it's very understated, is that in the United States, best practice is to integrate cybersecurity in a procurement. So when a tender or a solicitation comes out, it says that you must comply with United States standards for cybersecurity, and it specifies the documentation, and here are the SLAs that you need to meet. So then they are forcing that cloud service provider or other tool set or tool to actually align themselves and fit in nicely with their network. And that training procurement people sometimes is a lost thing because nobody thinks of it, but it's very important. So, thank you.
We're going to speak light and love into the procurement people.
Yeah,
All right.
we'll go to Nona.
You're amazing.
On those notes, I would like to thank the panelists, Branko, Magda, and Kristen, for coming and sharing their experiences, and I would like to thank you guys. This panel is over, and I'd like to support everyone. Thank you.